Okay, we're talking with Ray Kimber about cables, and we've gotten pretty geeky here. But hey, this is Home Theater Geeks, so totally cool with me. Um, let's spend a couple minutes talking about the debate, which has been raging for decades, about how much influence cables really have on the sound of an audio system. We've learned now that braiding can make a big difference in terms of noise cancellation, noise reduction, shall I say, and other things, good connections, soldering, and so on. But can it? As I'm sure you know, there's so many people debating about, yes, they make a huge difference. No, they don't make much difference at all. There's this whole issue of can we ABX test cables to sort of scientifically determine how much difference there is? What is your sense of this whole debate?
Theoretically, I think that ABX is a great idea, except that the use of the ABX hardware gives you a lowest common denominator, and I'm just suspicious that it won't provide all the fidelity that you need to make good choices about that.
Interesting. So in other words, the ABX hardware, the box in the middle that switches between one and the other, is where you're going to get quite a bit of degradation, and maybe any differences that might exist are going to be equalized in a sense.
Yeah, or just below a certain threshold. And that's not to say that ABX isn't highly useful for some things, and they do as good a job as they can. But the fact of the matter is still additional stages of electronics and the switching circuits and so on. But I can tell you how we demoed cable for new dealers back when we first started, and I would go into a dealer who would maybe never heard of us and say, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like you to take the smallest two-way speaker that you sell the most of. So something that was their bread and butter. And then I said, and now I want a receiver that is the cheapest receiver that you sell the most of that has a speaker A, speaker B switch. And so we would hook up one speaker cable on one and one speaker cable on the other, and set the speakers next to each other, and so that we're dealing with the same channel. So right channel is switched between the other right channel, and the difference was pretty darn convincing. We had so close to 100% close rate with an order before I walked out the door that it wasn't funny. So that was simple. It was understandable. It was straightforward, and it could be repeated any number of times. My one experience with a giant ABX demo was at AES in New York, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I don't know. And someone who was really having a problem with so-called perceived sound rather than measured sound, and cables were one of those. And they had really done a kind of a questionable demo. They had mid-level teal speakers on platforms in front of a room of a few hundred people, so they were above head level, so the whole energy was firing into the ceiling, and a modest high-quality amplifier. So they were using really good gear, but this should have been for a demo in front of a half a dozen people at the most in an appropriate sized acoustic space. And so the demo went on for a while, and then the guy got up there and he was quite he was quite a showman. And at one point he said and waved his hand out to the audience and said, "So how many people in this audience have some of those so-called golden ears?" And he said it with a very derisive tone of voice. More than 3/4 of the audience raised their hands. and that pretty much shut the demo down right there. He just slunk off the stage, essentially.
Wow.
And we never heard another word about it.
Huh. Well, so much for that. Creamy Corncob is asking a similar question here. What are your thoughts about overpriced cables? I mean, you know, your cables, I'm sure, aren't cheap because you spend a lot of time and you have a lot of machinery and so on. But I mean, they can get astronomical, these cables. I mean,
yes, and so do ours. What you're buying at the high end is you're buying absolute diminishing returns. There's no question about that. Or you're borrowing bragging rights, and you're buying trophy construction and trophy materials that don't directly lend itself to any audio performance. We of course have cables in our line that are best buys. For example, they're little hot rods. The VS series is one that comes to mind. But we have a policy that dealers can send back cables at any time. We'll just simply take them back. So you could go to one of our dealers, and at least on our end of it, because we'll take the cables back, you can make arrangements with the dealer, and they should take them back if you want to demo them. I know that a number of dealers do that, and we a few years ago we had somebody who wanted to try an all silver system. This was tens of thousands of dollars worth of cables on a relatively modest system. So it could be that the cables equal the cost of all the hardware. Wow. And they, and the dealer said, the customer just straight up is curious, wants to try it. Are you game? And I said, absolutely, we'll send them to you. So we sent them down, and after a week or two, the dealer said, okay, we got them back from the customer, and we're sending them back to you. And I said, fine. Before we got the cables back in UPS, the dealer called back and said, turn them back around. The customer is going to buy them.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Wow. And so he felt that he was getting enough benefit to justify spending as much on his cables as on the entire rest of the system.
Yes, that's true. And
more or less.
And
yeah.
Yes, cables can trick you up in very interesting ways. Like I say, even if you spend just a few dollars a foot for speaker cables from us, even if you've got speakers and amplifiers where you've spent, I don't know, a couple of $1,000 or under $1,000 if you were buying good stuff off eBay, you would hear an advantage that wouldn't be minor. It would be obvious.